I gave the most gorgeous man I'd ever met my phone number, and for 4 days I hated him for the silence that followed. I called him an asshole. I called him a coward. I sat in my apartment building an entire case against a man who had done absolutely nothing wrong, and the whole time the fault was mine. I just didn't know it yet. Let me go back to the beginning, to the party where it started. It was a Saturday night in late July, one of those parties where you show up knowing you're going to spend half the evening pretending to remember people's names. I'd been invited by a coworker, Danielle, and the only other person I knew was her boyfriend, Marcus, who spent most of the night by the drinks table talking about his fantasy football draft to anyone unfortunate enough to drift within range. So there I was, mid-30s, standing in a stranger's living room with a glass of lukewarm white wine, doing that thing where you look extremely interested in the framed art on the wall so you don't look like you're standing alone. The apartment was one of those beautiful old pre-war places. High ceilings, creaky wood floors, bookshelves that went all the way up and needed a ladder. String lights hung across the windows. It smelled like candles and somebody's cooking and, faintly, dog. And then the door opened, and he walked in. I want to describe the smile before anything else because the smile is what did it. He came through the door, scanned the room the way you do when you're a little late and don't know where your friends are, and then his eyes landed on the general area where I was standing and this smile broke across his face. Big, unguarded. The kind of smile that isn't performing for anyone, that just happens because a person is genuinely, dumbly happy to be alive and in a warm room full of people. I remember thinking, with the clarity of a slap, oh no, he's gorgeous. I know. I got made fun of later for how much I went on about a man's smile. I don't care. Some things you just have to be honest about. He drifted into the same conversational circle I was in, a loose knot of 5 or 6 people talking about, I think, whether it was worth it to drive out of the city to see a meteor shower. He introduced himself. I'll call him Daniel because I'm changing every name here, including my own. You can call me Nora. I'm Daniel, he said, and stuck his hand out like we were at a business meeting, and then immediately laughed at himself for how formal it was. And that little self-deprecating laugh got me even more than the handshake did. That was weird. Hi. I don't know why I did that. No, it was very professional, I said. I feel like we should exchange LinkedIn profiles. God, if only I'd known. We started talking, and the strangest thing happened, the thing that only happens a handful of times in your whole life if you're lucky. The circle around us just dissolved. One by one the other people peeled off to refill drinks or find the bathroom or join a louder conversation, and neither of us noticed, and by the time I looked up we were standing alone in the corner by the bookshelf, and it felt like we'd been talking for 10 minutes but it had been closer to an hour. He was smart. Genuinely, effortlessly smart, the kind of person who asks you a question and then actually listens to the answer instead of waiting for his turn to talk. He remembered things I'd said 20 minutes earlier and circled back to them. When I made a joke, he didn't just laugh, he built on it, handed it back to me better. Here's the part that surprised me the most, and it's a little embarrassing to admit. As the night went on, the party filled up, and a lot of very beautiful, very put-together women arrived. There was a whole cluster of them near the kitchen talking loudly about their dates. Raya this, Raya that, swiping through the app to show each other men, comparing notes on some guy who took a helicopter somewhere. They were stunning. They were exactly the kind of women I'd expect a man like Daniel to gravitate toward. And he did not so much as glance over. His attention stayed locked on me like there was nothing else in the room worth looking at. Do you know how rare that feels? To be, for one night, the only thing a person seems to want to look at? I felt myself unclenching in a way I hadn't in a long time. At some point I mentioned, totally offhand, that I was allergic to dogs and there was clearly one living in this apartment. I said it like a throwaway comment, the way you complain about the weather. He nodded and we kept talking about something else entirely. I forgot I'd even said it. 2 hours later, deep into the night, my eyes started to itch and I felt the tickle in my sinuses and I sneezed once, twice, that runaway allergy sneezing where you know it's just going to keep coming. And before I could even say anything, before I could apologize or dig for a tissue, Daniel was already up. It's the dog, he said. Come on, let's get you some air. And he steered us out onto the little balcony off the living room, away from the dander into the cool night. I want you to understand, I never told him again. I mentioned the allergy once in passing 2 hours before, buried in a conversation about a dozen other things. And he'd filed it away. He'd remembered. When I started sneezing, he didn't need me to explain. He already knew the cause and he'd already decided to fix it. That's the moment, honestly. The smile got my attention. But the quiet, unshowy thoughtfulness of a man who listens and remembers and acts, that's the thing that made my chest go warm and my defenses come all the way down. We stayed out on that balcony for a long time. The city hummed below us. Somebody inside was playing music and we could hear it muffled through the glass. We stood close, shoulders almost touching, and talked about our families and our jobs and the places we wanted to travel and the specific, weird little things that make a person a person. A stranger. Someone neither of us knew, some friend of a friend who wandered out for a cigarette, looked at the two of us and said, "You two make a really cute couple," and then wandered back inside, and Daniel and I just kind of stared at each other and laughed, because the truth was we'd been acting like a couple for 2 hours without either of us deciding to. It had just happened. The party wound down around 3 in the morning. We shared an Uber home because we lived in the same general direction. In the back seat, in the dark, with the streetlights sliding across his face, he kissed me. It was a good kiss. A really good kiss. The kind where you feel it in your stomach. And when the car pulled up to his building and he had to get out, I grabbed his phone, or he grabbed mine. I honestly can't remember whose hands were shaking more, and I typed my number in. I gave him my number and he gave me that smile one more time through the car window as he walked backward toward his door. And I rode the rest of the way home feeling like the luckiest woman in the entire city. And then came Sunday. Sunday, I woke up around noon, hungover and glowing, and checked my phone approximately every 11 seconds. Nothing. But I told myself, be reasonable, Nora. We'd both gotten home at 4 a.m. He was probably sleeping the day away, same as I wanted to. It would be weird to expect a text before dinner time. I gave it grace. I put the phone face down. I picked it back up. Face down. Back up. You know the dance. By the time I went to bed Sunday night with no word from him, I'd built a whole little rationalization. He's playing it a tiny bit cool, that's fine, the text will come tomorrow. Monday. Silence. I went to work and tried to focus and checked my phone in the bathroom like a teenager. Nothing. I told myself Monday is a brutal day. Everybody's slammed. The weekend feels far away by Monday morning. He'll text tonight. He didn't text that night. Tuesday. Even more silence. And now the story I was telling myself started to curdle. I know all the advice out there about how a man is supposed to wait a few days to text so he seems cool and in demand and not too eager. I've read the same articles everyone else has. But here's the thing, we were both in our mid-30s. We were grown adults. I genuinely believed, I hoped, that we were both past the point of playing those exhausting little games. My whole philosophy about dating at this stage of my life is simple. If you like someone, you text them when you can. Life is short. It is genuinely too short to spend your time on someone who's only half interested in you, someone rationing out their attention to seem more valuable. I don't want the person who plays it cool. I want the person who's warm. So by Wednesday, I was a mess of contradictory emotions all fighting for space in my chest at the same time. I was angry, how dare he? How dare he look at me like that all night, remember my allergy, kiss me in that Uber and then just vanish. I was hurt. I was insecure in that ugly, spiraling way where you start interrogating yourself. Was I not pretty enough? Did I say something wrong? Was the kiss not as good as I thought? Did he sober up and realize I wasn't what he wanted? And underneath all of it, I was trying to protect myself by getting bitter. Well, good. I'm glad I only wasted one night on this guy. Better to find out now that he's the kind of man who ghosts. Dodged a bullet. Except it didn't feel like dodging a bullet. Felt like getting shot. What would you have done in this situation? Let me know in the comments, because what I did next is either genius or completely unhinged, and honestly I still can't decide which. I typed his name into Google. I remembered his first name, his last name, and where he worked. He'd mentioned his company that night, and it had stuck. And it turned out he was incredibly easy to find. Almost too easy. His name, his company, and boom, there he was. Now, my intention, I swear this is true, was pathetic but harmless. I just wanted to look at his face. That's it. I missed his face and I was sad and I wanted to see the smile that had gotten me into this mess. One more time, before I forced myself to move on and forget he existed. That was the plan. Look at a photo. Feel sad. Delete the browser tab. Move on with my dignity mostly intact. Except I fumbled it. Because of course I did. I clicked, and I did not mean to click, my thumb just did it, on a link, and the link took me straight to his LinkedIn profile. And the second the page loaded, I felt the blood drain out of my face. Because if you don't have your privacy settings locked down, LinkedIn tells the other person when you look at their profile. He was going to get a little notification. Nora viewed your profile. I stared at the screen in absolute horror. Now not only had this man ghosted me, but he was going to find out that 4 days later I was still so hung up on him that I'd tracked down his LinkedIn like some kind of stalker. I wanted to physically climb inside my phone and delete myself from the internet. I looked insane. I looked exactly as unhinged as I felt. But, and here's where my brain did that thing where it decides to fully commit to a bad situation. I figured, well, the damage is done. He already knows I looked. I might as well actually look now. So I scrolled down to his work history, and I did it with a specific petty little hope in my heart. Please let him be boring. Please let his resume be unimpressive. Please give me a reason to feel like I dodged something so I can stop feeling like I lost something. Reader, his resume was not boring. It was, in fact, one of the most impressive things I have ever seen in my life. A dozen genuinely cool jobs. Impressive schools, the kind of schools people put bumper stickers on their cars about. Projects I'd actually heard of. Accomplishments that made my own perfectly fine resume look like a grocery list. And the worst part, the part that really twisted the knife, was that he had never once bragged about any of it that night. Not a word. He'd been humble. He'd asked about me. A man with a resume like this had spent an entire party laser-focused on my life, my jokes, my dumb dog allergy, and hadn't dropped a single one of these accomplishments to impress me. Which meant he wasn't just gorgeous and thoughtful, he was humble too. And now I felt even worse. Great, I thought. Of course. I probably just wasn't impressive enough for him. He met someone better on Monday. That's why he never texted. I closed the laptop. I felt like garbage. I'd confirmed my own worst theory about myself and stalked a man in the process. A truly excellent Wednesday. And then, less than 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Link de notification. Daniel has sent you a connection request. I stared at it. He'd found me back. He'd seen that I looked, and instead of blocking me or ignoring me, he'd sent me a request. My hands were actually trembling as I accepted it. And then a message came through, and the message did not say what I expected it to say. It didn't say, hey, why are you stalking me? It said something more like, and I'm paraphrasing because I've read it so many times the exact words have blurred, hey, I'm so glad you found me. I texted you Saturday night when I got home, and then again Sunday, but I never heard back and I figured you changed your mind. I didn't want to be that guy who keeps texting when a woman's clearly not interested. I read it 3 times. He had texted me that night, and again the next day, and gotten nothing back, and being a decent, respectful man, had concluded that I wasn't interested, that I was the one who'd gone quiet, and had backed off out of politeness rather than pester a woman who'd apparently ghosted him. He hadn't ghosted me. I had ghosted him. If you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button. We post new stories every single day, and trust me, the way this unravels is worth sticking around for. So how, you're asking, does a woman ghost a man she desperately wanted to hear from, while simultaneously convinced he's the one who ghosted her? Let me tell you how. It's the dumbest, most human thing in the world. When I typed my phone number into his phone at 3 in the morning, tipsy, in the back of a moving Uber, with my hands shaking from the kiss and the wine and the sheer giddiness of the night, I got 1 digit wrong. 1 single digit. I transposed a number, or hit the wrong key, or my thumb slipped on the little glowing keypad in the dark, and I did not proofread it. Why would I? I was a woman in love with the last 2 hours of her life. Proofreading was the furthest thing from my mind. I handed his phone back with a wrong number in it, and a smile on my face, and rode home dreaming about a text that could never, ever arrive. So Daniel, that sweet, thoughtful, humble, ridiculously accomplished man, had done exactly what a good person does. He'd texted the number I gave him. Twice. And somewhere out there in the city, some poor stranger's phone had buzzed twice with warm, hopeful messages from a man they'd never met, and Daniel had waited, and heard nothing, and quietly, respectfully, let it go. He spent those same 4 days that I spent stewing and stalking, probably feeling a smaller, quieter version of the same thing. Guess she wasn't as into it as I thought. Oh well, it was a great night. We were two people who liked each other enormously, both convinced the other one had disappeared, separated by a single mistyped digit. If I had not been a creepy LinkedIn stalker, if I'd had the self-control to just look at his photo and move on, or the dignity to not click that link at all, we might never have found each other again. Could have been months. Could have been never. We'd have gone our whole lives as a beautiful 2-hour party memory, each of us privately a little wounded, each of us blaming the other for a silence that was really just a typo. Instead, because I couldn't resist snooping, we found the truth. And once we found it, we couldn't stop laughing about it. He messaged, then I messaged, and within an hour the whole misunderstanding tumbled out. The wrong number, the 4 days of mutual heartbreak, the fact that we'd both been quietly nursing the exact same wound over the exact same non-event. I gave him my number again. My correct number this time. I typed it very, very slowly. I read it back twice. I made him read it back to me. We were not going to let a digit ruin this a second time. And we set up a real first date. I could end the story there. Honestly, that's where I first thought it ended. A funny, wholesome little tale about a typo and a happy accident. But that first date was 2 weeks after the party, and everything that came after it is the part that actually matters, so let me keep going. For our real first date, we decided to walk around a park near the city and then get a drink. And I was nervous, normal first date nerves, sure, but also I was carrying a secret that was eating me alive. Because in the days after we reconnected, I had done something impulsive. I thought our story was so funny and sweet that I'd written it up and posted it online, to one of those forums where people share the ways they've messed up their own lives. And I expected nothing. The most attention anything I'd ever posted had gotten was maybe 20 little upvotes. This was just me, giggling to myself, sharing a cute story into the void. Except the void answered. Loudly. The post exploded. Tens of thousands of people upvoted it. Thousands more read it. My phone would not stop buzzing with notifications. Hundreds of strangers commenting, laughing, wishing me luck, sharing their own stories of smeared phone numbers and lucky second chances. A friend, not knowing I'd written it, sent it to me and said, "Ha! This is so you'd love this." My own sister called me and said, "Did you write this? I recognized your writing style immediately." A newspaper, an actual newspaper, wrote a little article about it. The story had completely escaped me and taken on a life of its own out there in the world. And now I had to go on a first date with the man at the center of it, knowing I'd put our private, tender little mix-up in front of tens of thousands of strangers without asking him first. I was terrified. He already thought I was a bit much for LinkedIn stalking him. What was he going to think when he found out I'd broadcast our story to the entire internet? Would he think it was a violation of his privacy? Would he think I was an attention seeker? Would he think I was plainly and simply a lunatic? I waited for him by a fountain in the park. And when I saw him walking toward me, that walk, that easy loose-limbed walk, and then that smile broke across his face again, I felt the same thing I'd felt at the party. Just instantly happier. And also instantly more scared because I thought I might be about to ruin the best thing that's happened to me in years, and I'm the one holding the knife. We walked the park. It was a gorgeous late summer afternoon, warm and golden. We found a pair of trees and sat under them and talked. And at some point I realized we were holding hands and I didn't remember either of us deciding to do that either. Kept happening with him. Things just happened easily without negotiation. We drifted toward the bar as the light went amber. And by the time I had a drink in my hand, my whole body was shaking with nerves. I took a couple of sips for courage, and then the words just fell out of me in a rush. I told him everything. That I'd thought our story was funny. That I'd posted it. That I'd expected 20 upvotes and instead gotten 35,000. That there was a newspaper article. that my sister recognized my writing, that the whole world had, in a small way, watched us fall into each other. And then, hands trembling, I pulled it up on my phone and I showed him the actual post, and I watched his face while he read it. And I have never in my life waited on someone's reaction the way I waited on his in that moment. He read the whole thing, quietly. His face didn't give anything away. And then he set the phone down, stood up, walked around the table, and kissed me. I let out the single biggest breath of relief of my entire life. It turned out he used the same forums himself. He read them all the time, and he thought the post was one of the sweetest things anyone had ever done. He wasn't upset. He was touched. We spent the rest of that date sitting at the bar reading the comments together, laughing at the funny ones, going soft at the sweet ones. There was one comment I'll never forget, from an older man who wrote that he'd met his wife at a bar decades ago, and she'd written her number on his hand, and by the next morning the ink had smeared so badly he could only read 4 of the 7 digits. So he'd sat there dialing combination after combination until he finally got her. Took him so long she'd assumed he wasn't going to call. They'd been together 31 years, married for 29. Daniel and I read that one twice. Neither of us said anything for a second. I think we both understood we might be reading a preview of our own lives. Later that week, he came over to my apartment and we cooked dinner together, and somewhere between chopping vegetables and burning something we shouldn't have, the conversation turned honest. We both admitted out loud that neither of us liked casually dating a bunch of people at once. Neither of us wanted the modern merry-go-round of half attention and endless options. We didn't know exactly what this was yet, but we knew we already liked each other, and we knew we didn't want to be doing this with anyone else. And just like that, with vegetables on the cutting board and something faintly smoking on the stove, we were dating. The first weeks flew. We went apple picking. We hiked. We ate an absolutely unreasonable number of soup dumplings. One night at late-night karaoke, I discovered he has a genuinely beautiful singing voice, and he discovered, to his visible delight and horror, that I absolutely, catastrophically do not. I told a friend we were dating, and she asked, "Okay, but is he your boyfriend?" And I realized that in the strange modern world, you could be monogamously dating someone just for the fun of it, but calling someone your boyfriend or girlfriend meant something more. It meant you'd decided this person was genuinely important to your life. And here's what was different about him, about this. In every relationship before, I'd felt like I was supposed to wait. Wait for the man to decide he wanted me. Wait for him to say it first. Never say, "I love you," before he did, because that would look desperate, needy, too much. I'd spent years managing my own feelings down to seem more palatable. With Daniel, there was none of that. There was no game where he waited to text me back so he'd seem cooler and less available. There was no flinching away from talk about the future. It was just two people openly and without armor enjoying getting to know each other. And because he was so open, I felt safe being open too. I could be honest. I could want things out loud. So after about 6 weeks of dating but not technically boyfriend, I did the thing I'd never let myself do before. I stopped waiting to be chosen. I wrote my feelings down on a card, and I asked him to be my boyfriend. And he said yes. The year that followed was the best of my life, and I want to tell you about it in the small ways because it's the small ways that end up meaning everything. We took trips to foreign places where I promptly got us lost. Twice. Once at night in a town with no streetlights, which I am still, to this day, apologizing for. We made 100 less dramatic runs to the grocery store. We danced until we couldn't feel our feet at concerts, and we curled up in bed for lazy nights watching TV. We finished an entire animated series together, both of us far too invested for grown adults. I fell asleep on his chest to the sound of rain against the window, and my very last thought before sleep took me was that I had never, in my whole life, felt so completely safe. Some mornings I'd wake up before him and just look at his face. Relaxed in sleep, he looked so young, so unguarded. The same open face that walked through that party door. But the hair falling across his forehead already has a little gray in it, and sometimes seeing that gray would fill me with this sudden, aching sadness. The sadness of loving someone and understanding all at once that our time together on this planet is finite. That there will not be enough of it. There never is when it's the right person. Do you think they made the right call, her trusting a gut feeling after 2 hours, and him opening up instead of playing it cool? Drop a comment below and let me know. Over that year he showed me, in 1,000 tiny unshowy ways, that he wasn't just a good boyfriend. He was a thoughtful friend and a caring son. My family adored him. My friends adored him. And watching the people I loved fall for him too made me love him even more. He made me feel heard. He made me feel seen, actually seen, not just looked at. He had this way of building me up that made me feel like the best possible version of myself whenever I was near him. He was brilliant and genuinely great at his job, which I'm not ashamed to say is sexy as hell. He had his finances in order like a serious adult, but he'd still throw out some ridiculous dance move while we made breakfast just to make me laugh. He was cleaner than me, honestly, so much so that I've actually put real effort into being tidier out of respect for him, which anyone who knew the old me would tell you is a miracle. And in a whole year together, he never once raised his voice. I don't think we had a single real argument. The relationship was healthy and happy and calm. I didn't know a relationship could feel that calm. I got some comments back when I first shared our story from people who thought looking a man up on LinkedIn after he didn't text was crazy, maybe even a red flag. And I want to be clear about something because it matters to me. If Daniel had turned me down on LinkedIn, if he'd seen my message and said no thanks, or just left me on red, I would have respected that completely and never contacted him again. I want to be very clear about that. This was never about not taking no for an answer. It's just that within a few hours of meeting this man, he had become inexplicably, undeniably important to me. Some part of me knew, and I'm so deeply glad I trusted my gut and went looking, because my gut was right. 2 years after that party, we got engaged. And I'll be honest, the proposal itself was a little backwards. I'm picky and indecisive to a fault, so we decided we wouldn't tell anyone until I'd found the exact ring I wanted. I drove myself half crazy over it. White gold, pave band with mill grain along the edges, a tapered cathedral setting, a lab-grown oval diamond just under 2 carats, 6 delicate prongs. I knew precisely what I wanted, which is funny, because for most of my life I never let myself admit I wanted anything at all. I found a small jeweler who made it exactly right. And then, a little while after that, a little boy. We spent weeks arguing gently about names, and the only one we both kept coming back to, the only one that fit, was a name we just liked the sound of. He's Jewish and I'm white, Daniel is Chinese, and this little person is all of us folded together. He's 1 year old now. He has, I'm told, his father's smile. So here's what I keep coming back to when I think about how all of this happened. My entire life, my beautiful marriage, my son. All of it hangs on a mistyped phone number, and on the fact that instead of protecting my pride, I let myself be a little unhinged. I let myself snoop and stalk and look foolish and reach out even though I was sure I'd been rejected. If I'd played it cool the way I'd been taught to my whole life, if I'd protected my dignity and my ego and just let the silence stand, I'd have never known the truth. I'd have spent years quietly believing a good man ghosted me, when the truth was he never got the chance to call. The person you're waiting to text you back might be waiting for you. The silence you're taking as rejection might just be a wrong number, a slipped digit, a misunderstanding neither of you can see from your own side of it. And sometimes the bravest, most important thing you can do is risk looking foolish. Reach out, trust your gut, click the link, send the message, because the alternative is a lifetime of never knowing what you almost had. I gave the best man I've ever known the wrong number. And then I was crazy enough to go find him anyway. Thank God I was. Guys, the goal here is 1,000 subscribers on this channel, and we are getting closer every single day. If you have not hit subscribe yet, please consider it. It genuinely makes a difference. Thank you for being here.